Hi everyone, this is Smriti Mishra from BrandWagon Online, and today I have with me Vidyut Kaul, who's the head personal health of Philips Indian Subcontinent. Hi Vidyut.
Hi Smriti, nice to meet you.
Nice to have you here as well. So, Vidyut, we'll start with a set of questions. My first question to you would be, how has the business been over the last 2 years, especially in light of the ongoing pandemic which we've been through? So, how has it been reflected in the business?
Last couple of years, Smriti, if I have to summarize, have been a roller coaster of a ride. Right. When the first wave hit, nobody knew what was going to happen. So I think it was reflected in the environment in the country where everything went into a lockdown mode. And that's exactly happened with most of the businesses, including ours. So we were thinking, how do we reach out to our consumers? So there was a bit of a confusion at the onset of pandemic. But slowly and steadily, the teams came together and we realized at the end of the day, the challenges and crises will come. We have to be true to our consumers.
Right.
So once we started keeping consumers at the heart of what we wanted to do as an organization, things started to fall in place. And we realized that actually there was a way to reach consumers. People who are stuck at home, how do they cut their hair or their kids' hair or even trim their beard? So that became a challenge. Workplace took a very different meaning, right? Kitchen tables, living room sofas, all became the new definition of workplace. Yes, people were not stepping outside their homes, but still behind the laptop screens, no matter what you're wearing beneath, at least you have to show your face. And that became an important aspect of a consumer's life. So once we started understanding those nuances of a daily life of a consumer, we started to put our efforts in, and that bore results. So last 2 years, again, have been a roller coaster. We had a share of learnings and we had a share of wins along the way. So it's a high-level summary. Of course, you know what's happened since last year, 2021, with the global crisis on supply chain, shortage of semiconductors and chips. All of that has happened, but as a team, what we do, as a business, what we do, as a company, what we do is we've kept a focus on our consumers and we've been true to them, and we've seen good deal of success in keeping true to one thing, which is our consumers.
Right. So, coming back to the trends bit, what were the trends that you witnessed? And of course, with things gradually opening up, do you feel that all of these trends are likely to continue?
Absolutely. And I'll give you two versions of the story, right? And probably you will be able to relate to it. And I think a lot of your audience will be able to relate to it. This is a story of an individual, we can call him X, who's stuck at home during pandemic, first wave, second wave, has to attend office calls. What does he do? How does he groom himself? Because at least he has to turn on his camera for the calls. And let's say Mr. X also has a kid who needs to get a haircut. This individual has never touched an electric grooming device in his life. So that's when the first scenario, arose, where these consumers started getting into the category. And that's what we saw. So almost 35 to 40% of consumers that came into the category in the last 2 years were first-time users who never ever held a grooming device in their hands.
Right.
That's a big number. So that's the first scenario. Now, scenario 2, things are returning back to normal. Schools and colleges have opened up, offices have opened up. Imagine another consumer here, gender agnostic, male, female, start to go out, going to a college, going to a job. You want to look good. Because when you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you feel confident. When you feel confident, things happen. Right? So that's the essence we've seen. There's this innate desire to connect with your friends and peers, whether it's at college, school, or even at workplace. So this desire to look good, feel good, be confident, that continues. So whether it's pandemic or no pandemic, the desire of consumers to stay sharp is always there. And that's what we always look at, which is why I go to my first point. If we are true to consumers as a brand, we are able to understand these nuances that keep happening. And we can tell you with the team we have, because consumers and the consumer centricity as the core of what we do as a brand, we're able to understand consumers. We touch base with a lot of consumers on an ongoing basis, almost on a weekly basis. And we are able to tap into these nuances and insights.
Right. So, how have all of these trends translated into revenues, like the numbers basically? Especially if we talk about the recently concluded fiscal, how have you seen a growth, say, over the last 2 years?
So without getting into financials specifically, I can say that we are witnessing a very strong double-digit growth for some of the categories that we have in our portfolio, because ours is a very diversified business. We have men's grooming, which is all about men and all facial hair removal, no matter what part of the body you look at. We have female beauty, which is all about hair care, female depilation, skin care. We have a very wonderful and a very beautiful brand called as Avent, which is a mother and child care brand. Again, an iconic brand in its own right. And then very recently we introduced Philips Sonicare, which is again a great future growth builder for us, because it's bringing new solutions to consumers, especially in India. So if I look at an amalgamation of all these product categories that we have, we've been witnessing very solid growth. There are categories in our portfolio where we've had CAGRs of about 35-40%.
Okay.
Yeah? So it's a healthy business. It's growing rapidly, but more than the numbers, what gives me joy at the end of the day when I look at where we are going as a brand is the number of lives we're touching and the number of consumer homes we're getting into. That is an important metric for the team, more than the revenue, because revenue comes if we do all the right things as a brand, if we are able to engage with consumers in the right manner, bring the right solutions and the right innovation, which is what is in the DNA of the company, to bring innovation that matters and that delivers an impact on consumers' life. Once we do that, the revenue comes. It's an end result of everything.
Right. So as of now, what is the contribution of the personal health category to the overall business? Has this in a way changed during the pandemic, or is it similar?
So if I look at men's grooming business for us, it accounts for more than a third of our business.
Okay.
And again, as I said, it's been growing very rapidly. Female beauty business, that we call it, female grooming business, that business has seen its ups and downs. But if I look at 2-year, 3-year growth, we are seeing phenomenal growth. Especially the moment COVID wave ends, that business hits a triple-digit growth.
Okay.
And I think that's the nuance between men and women. We've seen women wanting to indulge in more personal care when things open up and probably when they want to go out more. So post-pandemic, that business is flying.
Okay. And how much would you attribute to online channels in enabling the growth of the segment today?
I think online plays a very important role. And I know this question might seem rhetorical to an extent, but I look at it as a channel, as a way to reach consumer at the end of the day, right? Because that's what a channel is, an online and offline. These are channels through which consumers engage and interact and make their purchase decisions eventually. If I look at our core target group as a brand, and this is very, very specific to us here in India, we're talking about youngsters between the age group of 15 to 35-year-olds. That's our core TG. Now, these consumers are digitally native.
Yeah.
So online obviously becomes a very important touch point from a media consumption perspective, but also from a purchase perspective. So I think it'll be fair to say that we are doing pretty well in e-commerce. It is a big chunk of a business, and we are continuing to see growth. But more than growth, we're continuing to see engagement with the consumers through online, even in lower tier cities, which is again a very important metric for us.
Right. So how much of the business is coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities as of now?
So if I were to divide, I will give you a growth indexation probably that helps better. So the lower tier cities are contributing to more than 30% of our growth this year.
Okay.
And it is in line with everything that is happening at a macro level in India. If you look at the number of digital consumers and the digital transactions which are happening, for the first time, tier 2 cities have overtaken tier 1 cities. in daily transactions which happen digitally. So it's where the big future growth lies, not just for us, I think for almost all the brands out there.
Right. So again, coming back to the sales split, I wanted to understand, what is the kind of contribution of online versus offline channels?
So online and offline contribute equally for us. So it's an equal split,
Okay.
right? Let's say half-half. From a growth perspective, again, as I say, I don't see that split dying down, and I'll give you my reasons for it. One, again, the first reason and the foremost reason is the consumer segment we are targeting. We're targeting youngsters, Gen Z, millennials, who are digitally native. If you look at the content they consume, the mediums through which they engage and interact, it's primarily online. So they will continue to be there. So online will continue to be relevant for us and will continue to be a growth engine. But at the same time, I see the importance of offline being there.
Yeah.
Because many of these product categories that we talk about, they're very new in India. And that's our push right now. We want to bring technology, we want to bring innovation, we want to bring premium products to the country, which consumers don't experience today in India. You can probably see some of these products if you were traveling somewhere abroad, let's say Singapore or somewhere in US or London. You can see these products, but a lot of these solutions were not available in India, and we're trying to bring them here. And one of the first things when you bring innovation and new tech is you want people to experience it. So therefore, one of the most important parameters is how do you get consumers to experience the products, the new age tech, how do they touch and feel it.
Right.
So therefore, offline for us is a very important experiential play, because we want consumers to experience those products and get that service and that connect. So two different consumer segments.
Right. And in terms of expansion also, you're there across e-commerce platforms and, across stores. So how do you plan to expand further to go deep into the tier 2, tier 3 cities?
No, fantastic question. Thank you. So there are three ways to expand distribution. And again, in a country as broad and as diverse as India, first is obviously increase our presence in distribution in retail. So what we do is every year we look at retail census, we look at the distribution mapping, and we do a population division on the basis of income, education, and where the government is trying to focus and trying to lift those cities and towns. So that's what we do in terms of city-wise mapping. And then we create a list for us, and then on the basis of that, we see which cities do we need to get into in terms of distribution, physical distribution in the stores. The second, obviously, play is through e-commerce, and there are two wings to it. One is e-commerce, which is all the marketplace platforms that are out there, and also the verticals. We see verticals today playing a big role in that. If you look at fashion verticals, Nykaa, Myntra, they play a big role in driving penetration. And third thing is our own play, which is direct to consumer.
Yes.
That's the third avenue with which we feel as a brand, because there are a lot of consumers who come to a website, who engage with us, and also in our weekly immersions, they want to interact more with Philips. So therefore, we would like to take these three different routes to drive our penetration deeper in the country.
Right. Okay. So now coming back to the marketing plans. Okay. So I want to understand what are the strategies being put in place, especially for these audiences, which is relatively price sensitive also. So how do you communicate the product proposition equally across the masses? So that's something that I want to understand.
Yeah. Again, I'll have to give you two answers to that question as well. The first answer is when we talk about India and the consumer segments that we engage with, we have consumers who are in the category of recruit, that consumers we want to get into the category. Yes, you're right. For those consumers, price becomes a very important play.
Right.
But there is also a big chunk of Indians who have the money, who can afford tech, who can afford innovation that delivers value. So we're taking two different approaches towards these consumers. So that's on a high level. Then if you look at the campaigns, again, we start with end in mind. The end in mind is we want to recruit consumers, we want to get them into the category. So there's recruitment part and there's also upgrade part, people who we want to upgrade. And then if I take one step back, how do we get to these consumers? So then the marketing strategy is an outcome of this end goal that we have. So consumers who we want to recruit, where are they today? Which media are they consuming? Where are they living? How can we create a conversation with them rather than being a monologue? Which is what many of the brands have been doing. If you look at the last 3 decades of advertising, many of the brands have been using the monologue, which is, this is how a successful man looks like or a woman looks like. If you do this, if you apply this, if you use this product, you will be like this. But that's not who we are as a brand. That's not the brand philosophy we have. We believe in empowering consumers. We believe in bringing solutions and technology which puts the power in the hands of consumers so that they can choose how they want to do, what they want to do, and what suits best for them. Because we're saying, no two people are alike, right? So how do I make sure that I understand those differences and those nuances and give you solutions that work best for you and also best for the other person? So that's typically the approach we have. We believe in the innovation that we bring, which we put a lot of effort and energy behind. And then the marketing becomes a way using different media for different target groups to bring those solutions across.
Sure. An extension of this would be, you recently rolled out a campaign with Vidyut Kaul on board. So he is famous across masses. Going forward, how do you plan to leverage the cricketer's presence, amongst the masses?
Again, Virat is an icon in India. So when we started thinking about the 10 on 10 U, which is the campaign idea, it again came from the consumer immersions we do. And we were specifically looking at this youngster segment, a 15 to 25-year-old. If you look at what's happened in the last decade or so, especially in India, with the advent of social media and with everything that's been happening in the society, right? We are more moving towards nuclear families and urbanization. What happened, especially in this case, was these youngsters who we engage with, they were feeling pressured more than ever. If you hear about the cases of depression, more than ever. If you hear about what people do today, every day these youngsters would be putting themselves out there to be judged. Whether you put a post on social media to get a like or a comment, whether you go out, you meet your friends, you're being judged. Whether you meet your relatives, they're judging you. So the judgment became a big thing. That I want to be liked. And that's one of the big themes underlying this campaign was that masculinity is in a transition. Which means that consumers want no longer to fit into a society, which was a norm previously, right? I remember my decade, it was all about fitting in. I want to be part of this friend group. I want to be part of this society. I want to be part of my family. Now everybody wants to stand out. I want to look different. I want to stand out. So that puts additional pressure. So this pressure, when it keeps building, either you make it or you break it. So that's what we saw with our consumers a lot. So they were feeling the pressure. So 10 on 10 you came saying that no matter what others think of you, what matters is the score that you give yourself. Because you should be the one who should be judging yourself, not the others. So believe in yourself. And that's a conversation, which today it's a form of a campaign. And Virat obviously is the face of the brand. But for me, it's a movement that we are creating. It's all about giving the power to consumers so that they can shape their true self. And why do I say as a movement? Because we started with Virat, which has a mass appeal across the country. But we have taken that approach and made it very, very local, very regional. We've taken different set of influencers. That's the big shift. Till last year, we used to work with 10, 12, 15 influencers. This year, we'll be working with 150 influencers. So we picked up, even from the cricket fraternity, I don't know if you've seen the Insta, we picked up Umran Malik. We've picked up Devdutt Padikkal. We picked up Yash Dhol. We've picked up Rituraj Gaikwad. We picked up many influencers across different parts of the country, across different genres as well, from comedy to tech, because somehow the connection between this high level message and how it lands at a very local level, that's the most important thing. How does somebody living in Thrissur versus somebody who's living in Jammu versus somebody who's living in Ranchi, how do they feel connected? How do they feel that this is for me? So that's the difference that we are trying to drive with the campaigns.
Right. And coming to the media mix bit, I wanted to understand what is the kind of investment you'll be making across different mediums. Will digital get a higher share or traditional mediums such as TV and print? So how exactly are you looking at allocating your spends?
Again, I think you'll laugh if I'll give you the answer. It's been a roller coaster on that as well, on the media front. With pandemic, we started seeing digital media consumption on a rise. Yeah. And what we've seen, especially in the last 3 to 4 months, is some of the traditional media is coming back. Yes. So the consumption patterns from a consumer perspective are also changing. So we are also keeping a close eye on how consumers are consuming today. So if you're in a lockdown, you're not going outside. So out of home, for example, becomes not so relevant, right? But now you go out, you hang out with your friends, out of home becomes relevant. So we are also keeping a close eye on what happens, for example, with television. How does the television industry also change in order to get more data-centric and deliver the content to the right audiences? So those are the trends we are keeping a close watch on, and that's how we make those decisions, which sometimes even happens that we make those changes even in a week if we see consumption patterns changing.
Okay, so one last question to you would be, what are the future plans on the personal health front in terms of launches, in terms of expansion and growth? You recently launched the Sonicare range, as you mentioned. So what are the plans? What can we expect going forward?
More tech, more innovation, a lot of India focus, I would say. And I'm not talking about long-term plans. I'm talking about something which you will even see in the next 2 to 3 months. So we are trying to bring innovation which is meaningful and relevant for our consumers, and it's all nuanced and created around the needs of Indian consumers. We will be getting into the care space in hair care. A lot of brands talk about styling, but there's an essential element in India, and we'll talk about it later once you see the products, which is about care. You know, Indian traditions and cultures and values are very much ingrained in the care routine. And that's what we want to bring. So we will have a set of new solutions coming in the next couple of months in the hair care category, which will talk about care. Okay. Yeah? Then if we start looking at men's grooming, again, you will see expansion in the portfolio there, again, on the lines of giving more power to the consumers, whether it's facial hair removal, which is, again, an area where we see a lot of consumer engagement. And then when we get into the area of mother and child care, the Avent brand that we have, there, again, we see the percentage of women who participate in workforce, that's increasing. So we want to empower those women to be free, right? Not to worry about their small babies at home. And we're bringing a lot of solutions there as well from Avent. So a lot of exciting innovation roadmap lined up even for this year. So we hope, when we meet next, I'll be able to share a lot more products that you can take a look at.
Definitely. On that note, thank you, Vidyut, for speaking to us.
Thank you so much.